Brendon Burchard is a 3-time New York Times bestselling author and high-performance coach who has trained over 1.5 million people. He went from struggling with depression and surviving a serious car accident to becoming the world's highest paid motivation and marketing trainer. Need motivation?
Watch the top 10 of Believe Nation because I love it.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men. All my life, like na 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 na. For my top 10, top 10, na 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 na. This one's for my top 10.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more, and you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Brendon Burchard, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1. Go all in.
You have to be all in, and it's the hardest thing to do because if it fails, then you can feel like a failure. I think of this idea of performance necessity. 2 stories kind of come to mind. One is I was working with an Olympic gold medalist sprinter, and we're in the tunnel and we're going out, and he's talking about the competition, and we get out to the blocks, and I said, he was really worried about the competition. I said, well, how do you even gauge like who's going to win? You know, in his particular race, people are winning, but by 1/100th of a second, tenths of seconds. I mean, these are really close sprints. And I said, well, how do you know? I said, who would you even bet on? And he says, I would bet on the guy who gets down at the blocks, gets himself settled, looks at the finish line, then says, I gotta do this for my mom. And I was like, ooh, that's good. His performance necessity in that is, it's necessary for him to win that race for his mom. I think of, when I started my career and I really decided to go all in with writing and online training. This is like 2006. I'd gone broke, completely bankrupt, and failed. I left my corporate job. I had this cushy kind of corporate job as a consultant. Good job. Left it to write. And I didn't know how to make it as a writer. I wanted to do seminars, workshops, didn't know how to do that. So I was pretty much a hot mess, ran out of money. I got nothing to my name, nothing, no positive prospects. No one's calling me except the guys who want the money. And one night I'm writing, and the apartment was so small, on the bed I had all my bills, my vision boards, all my research, all my journals. Like the bed was basically the desk, the extended desk. And my lady comes in, Denise, and she walks past me, but she sees I'm like trying to write. So she doesn't want to disturb me. She crawls under the covers of the bed, and I'm just typing, casually typing away. And I look over, and I see my woman sleeping under my bills.
Wow.
And it was just like, because none of us want to see our family suffer because we are not performing.
Sure.
And I was just like, I gotta figure this out. And I'm telling you, I wrote more that night than any night in my entire life. Next day I wrote more than ever. That birthed Life's Golden Ticket, which became a bestseller. And in 18 months later, because I was like, I'm gonna figure out this online thing, I'm gonna figure out marketing, I'm gonna figure out how to teach, I'm gonna figure out how to train and get paid for it, because I'd never really been paid for those things. I said, I'm gonna figure out this industry, and I'm gonna make it. 18 months later, after her crawling under the bills, I made $4.6 million
Jesus.
online. Total transformation. People are like, how did you do it? I'm like, she was my necessity. I was not going to let my woman be in that situation. And she believed in me, she supported me, she married me. And, but she was my drive. And the second part was I went all in with my identity. I said, I am going to be a great writer, and I am going to be one of the greatest online trainers there ever was. As you said in the intro now, we've graduated over 2 million people have taken our online courses and video series now. I don't think it would have happened if I hadn't had the guts and maybe the no other choice to say, this is who I'm going to be, and I'm going to build into that. And it is necessary for me to become that person. So let's go.
Rule number 2, define the feeling you're after.
One of the major keys we found, the first high-performing habit, is seek clarity. And what we found is one of the practices that high performers do is they define the feeling they're after. And so when we had to explain that and later talk about it in the energy chapter, we had to differentiate between feelings and emotions, and they are different. Emotions tend to be, they're the same.
Yeah.
Like they're physical, they're almost always automatic, even though in the brain is creating associations, there's also happen. For us, they just kind of,
Emotion comes up.
yeah, you're watching a movie and you're just sad and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm crying. You didn't even have the tissues ready. You're just like, blah, but the feelings are usually interpretations that we make of what that emotion was and how it sticks and the meaning we give it to it.
Yeah.
And the example I used to, I like to give, and I don't remember if it's in the book or not, honestly, because here's what's happened. This book is 400 pages. It was 1,481 when I finished.
Baby, you edited it down.
Yes, and it was 1,481 good, complete.
Yes.
Like it was like awesome.
Yes.
But I was like, that's gonna freak people out. So we're publishing a bunch in academic journals later and then stripped it down to 400 pages so it's more readable and fun and orientable. So I can't remember if this one actually made it in there, but the example I like to give is if you and I go to a haunted house.
Yeah. Which I love.
I love them. And they scare me the crap. But if you and I walk around, you walk around one of the walls in a haunted house, someone jumps out at you.
Yeah.
You and I are both gonna jump.
Yes.
We are emotionally going to experience fright immediately. It's gonna be there, right? But I might be freaked out for the next 5 minutes and you might be laughing. Why? It's the meaning and the feeling that we've defined it as. That's fine for everybody. Here's the issue that people have, and you have to be careful about when we start talking about energy, because emotional energy is real.
Yes.
And that is, look, if at 6, like we go to the haunted house at 5 p.m. in the afternoon. If at 9 p.m. now you're in your house, you're alone, but you're completely safe, and you still feel scared, that's not the haunted house's problem. That is the way that you are defining and working through your own emotions. You had the emotion of terror and fear, and you're still experiencing that feeling. That's a mental job, not an emotional job. So your job is to go, wow, I'm at my house. I've lived here for 10 years. I've never been threatened in this house. This is a safe place. I got to redefine the feeling I want to experience. And I work with an Olympic sprinter, gold medalist, Olympic sprinter, as a client. And this person's huge breakthrough in getting better, in going from literally won Olympics before, not medaling at all, to now gold. I said, what was the thing?
Yeah.
And one of the things they said to me was, I learned to define the feeling. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he basically said, if there's a bunch of us at the starting blocks and we're all in perfect poise and perfect condition, the one to bet on is the one that says, this is the way I want to feel in this race right now. I know my emotions are going crazy. Like my heart's beating. I can hear everybody. I'm waiting for that shot blast. I can see my goal. I know how important this is. And all these, their emotions are there.
Yeah.
But that person's defining the feeling going, I'm going to feel centered now. I'm going to get myself in the zone now. Even though the emotion of anxiety is there for all Olympic level competitors, all of them. But they define that emotion as a feeling that helps give them a performance edge. And I think that's important too. Bruce Springsteen says if he's ever backstage and doesn't feel like nerves, he's gonna hang it up.
Yeah.
But that's anxiety, he's just defining it differently.
Rule number 3, shift your primary field of interest.
So what's the first social habit?
Increase productivity. It's kind of like no duh. High performers are productive dudes. But what the uniqueness is, they're not just pushing more paper or checking more boxes, because I both know a lot of people who their busy work isn't their life's work, so they don't feel fulfilled from their productivity. High performers are fulfilled from what they're accomplishing, which is a big measure. And here's what they did: they identified their primary field of interest, which is a big deal. Then they identified what we call PQO, prolific quality output, which is what's the outputs that matter and get recognized and rewarded the most in this primary field of interest.
And then they went all in at it. They became almost singular focuses. Like, when Jobs came back to Apple and got rid of all the product lines and said, these are what we're doing, that was prolific quality output. We're going to be prolific quality output on these things, not those. So it's important. Like for me, I thought there was this period of my life where I thought my primary field of interest was personal development. And that's what most of the world knows me for. I've never posted any marketing on my Facebook page in terms of like marketing advice. I teach that. That's way down in my funnel. My front, my YouTube, my podcast, Facebook are all just personal development. So I really identified with that. And then I launched my first book, Life's Golden Ticket, which was my life's message. And it kind of bombed. It hit bestseller and then it died, bam, pow.
Yeah.
And it really bummed me out. And I realized why. I said, you know what? I've been thinking my primary field of interest is personal development. And so I did all the book. I read all the books. I went to all the seminars. I, studied with the gurus. I became friends with, Wayne Dyer and Tony Robbins, the big names. That's what I thought it was. And then I had to make a shift. And I shifted my primary field of interest to how to share a message. And it completely shifted. When I started learning, I was like, you know what my primary field of interest needs to be is how to share a message, because I already got the message.
Right.
And then I said, well, what's prolific in this area? Well, what's prolific is what's recognized in this particular area right at that time, which is 2006 and 2007. Online video was just coming in. I mean, YouTube and Facebook were young.
YouTube was like 2004, I think.
Yeah.
Or 2005 or something like
Young.
that. Yeah.
Young. But what's mattering now is video. And I went all in. I've created 13 online courses because in my primary field of interest, sharing that personal development message was everything. So I learned how to share everything. And I went from, kind of a busted first book to in 18 months, 4.6 million in revenue.
Wow.
Because I learned how to sell. And I learned that sharing and selling a message was just as important, because if you don't make the money, you can't sustain the message. I had the message, but I wasn't making any money. I was the poor, broke writer dude. And I was So I shifted my primary field of interest and I got to understand marketing. I got to understand business and what's going to be prolific in what I'm doing now. And that's creating products to sell. Oh, I got to create more products, higher quality products. I showed you like my brochures and
beautiful stuff.
Just like super branding, all my books, I did all the covers of all my books and I obsessed about, I was like the look and the feel and stuff I didn't care about before. And that changed everything. So what I tell people is if you want to increase, don't just get more stuff done, get more of the right stuff done and really go in on it. I mean, super obsessed about the quality and really focus. It's that old saying, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, you better careful what your main thing is.
Rule number 4, have big dreams.
The big, huge finding that really scratches the surface of a lot of like cultural assumptions, especially in high performance, is this big cultural conversation we have about strengths. And find your strengths, follow your strengths. The strengths are everything. And take the strengths finder, figure out your top 5 strengths, follow those, don't do anything else. Or at least know what they are and really aim your career to that, or aim your behavior towards that, or use that as a guide for recognizing pattern. And by the way, I'm all for it. That's all great. I'm that guy who says, any self-reflection you do, I'm cheering you on. Like any assessment, any tool that makes you look at within inside, I'm like all for it. It's just that strengths are not highly correlated with long-term success. Right? There's not a lot of data and there is not a lot of research that has shown it leads to long-term success with the positive outcomes associated with what we care about in psychology, which is we care about happiness, we care about health, and we care about your positive relationships. And this myth that, we'll just follow our strengths to the promised land is just not true when you actually talk with high performers. Because my favorite question, and if anyone's down this, just go up to anyone who's good and say, were you always good at that? And they'll be like, no. They'll be like, not at all. Well, did you always have an inclination to do every element of what you're doing really well? No. Like me? Man, I sucked on stage. This year I've talked to 60,000 people live. This is really important because this idea that our strengths are going to give us everything. It's just not true. I sucked speaking on stage. Matter of fact, I was terrified of it. Terrified. But one of the reasons I love your show is because I had that intention of, I want to make an impact. And when someone actually asks and kind of owns that, like when they say, do I want to make an impact? And the answer is yes, and they own it. They realize they're going to have to develop. They can no longer leave their growth to randomness, because if they do, they'll always be mediocre. And they realize, I got to become something entirely above both of those. That's what most people don't see. They're like, we made this binary false conversation, right? It's not a true sort of choice here. It's a false dichotomy, we call it, right? It's not strengths or weaknesses. Many of you, if you have a big dream, a huge goal, you got to become something entirely above and beyond any strengths you even know about, feel, or own, and go way beyond any weaknesses you've ever even addressed or even you know about, because you're going to discover so many new strengths and so many new weaknesses on the path that it's almost irrelevant what they are now. It's what's the goal and build into that. I didn't know how to write. I get a lot of critics who are like literary guys about my books because every book is different, right? 6 books, all of them different. And the reason they all read differently is I am challenging myself as a writer to develop, to get better. Every book I write, I'm going to write this like nothing I've ever written before. And I go to work at building a new skill set to be able to write. Like Manifesto, I researched for 2.5 years just how to write it.
Wow.
Not what to write, how. How do I get that pentameter? What was the rhythm in which revolutionist rhetoric was spoken in or written in? Just to understand that took me 2.5 years. So I had no conceptual understanding of it. It wasn't a strength. It wasn't on my radar.
My friend Evan Carmichael's book, listen, humans are built to serve. Some people are built to serve the world, others want to serve the 25 people closest to them. But in either case, humans are built to serve. So if you're not happy right now, it's because you're not serving enough. You got to pick up this book because it's so inspiring to remind you that we're all here to contribute, to make a difference, to make an impact, and this is your field guide for that.
Rule number 5, integrate the wins.
Make small changes and see themselves making those changes. And then integrate that into their identity. Integration, if you heard me talk about it, it's a big topic in high performance. It's one of the reasons successful people often don't feel like successful people, or successful people don't feel confident because they've never integrated the wins, the W-I-N-S, wins. They've had a lot of wins in their life, but they never stopped and said, wow, I really appreciate that I got a little better today. I really appreciate that. Putting myself out there. I'm proud of myself for trying here. You know what? I am a little stronger because I did that thing. To acknowledge that you've gained some strength is everything to confidence, isn't it? Write it down. To acknowledge that you gained some strength. Look, if you had 2 kids and you survived, you've gained some strength. You get a little more confidence in life. I mean, come on, what else do you have to be through? If you've already made some money in your business, but it's always more, and you never stop to go, wow, I really came from nothing, I made some money here. And you never integrated the win in your identity stays the same level over here, even though you've actually accomplished a lot over here. And I see that all the time. It's why I see people who are the same level of confidence in their 20s and 30s, and now they're 50 and 60 leading other people, but they're completely racked with insecurity every night. They feel like crap. They don't know what they're doing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you should have so much more confidence. You should feel good about yourself. Integrate some of these wins.
Rule number 6, know your habits.
I do a 4-day event, and it's just me. I usually have 1 or 2 big names come in, but it's me 12 hours a day, 4 days, and I never sit down.
High energy.
I never sit down on stage. And super high energy. I mean, really going for it. Not just the clapping and the jumping, but really just spending heart. You know how hard it is.
Of course.
And I had to, about the same time, when I was 35, I had a famous strength and conditioning coach backstage. He works with me and Usher. And he's like, what do you eat back here? And, another guy came in and strapped the heart rate monitor machine. He goes, I'm equivalently working out at the marathon level every day for 4 days. they're like, you're not eating. I was losing on average 11 pounds in my
Crazy.
seminars. And I do 8 events a year. So I was losing 88 pounds a year. You know, it was like, it's horrible for your health. So I had to learn how to eat. I had to learn I do ice baths every night at my events, which
Smart.
no one loves to do that. But-
Here's the thing. I used to do it every day in football, like during the season.
Yeah.
And it sucks for the first month, but then you start to love it.
Yes, I have to do it.
You know what I mean? It's like
Yes.
you just start to, it feels so good. So.
Feels so good. After stage, you know,
That's
it's
the
like
best.
12 hours. So those are, no one says I want a habit of taking an ice bath at the end of the day. But if I want to be high performing on stage, that's the choice.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, people listening, you know, consult your doctor.
Of course. Yeah.
And
only do it for 10 minutes. Don't stay in for a half hour. Yeah.
Right. So, but all those things you have to. So,
gotta have
what are
energy.
your habits for energy? And the funny thing is, you sit down with high performers, they know them. They can tell you, I do this, and you're like, man, you're on your game.
Rule number 7, reveal uncertainty.
Reveal uncertainty. This one is the opposite dynamic of how I used to think of confidence, right? We think of confident people as people who are just like, bum, you know, it's like Wonder Woman, right, is confident. We think of Superman is confident, who just knows everything. Really what it turns out to be, high performers are listen to this, high performers are a lot less Superman and a lot more Clark Kent. That's what it turned to be. In all of the research, with millions of data points, in all of my conversations, high performers were much more likely to reveal things like, I don't know. Things like, I'm unsure. Things like, how do you think this should go? Things like, could you kind of help me with this? Like high performers literally explicitly share that they don't know how it's going, they don't know how it's supposed to go, that they need some help, that they need some mentorship, that they need some guidance. That's confidence. Confidence is not holding back the deck of cards of your weaknesses. Confidence is a comfort with vulnerability. And when people say vulnerability, they often don't know what they mean. When we're talking about vulnerability, specifically related to confidence and high performance, like measurable outcomes, the thing that we can measure and see is that high performers in group meetings, in team meetings, in social situations, more often share their insecurity. They more often say, I don't know how this is supposed to go. Or, you know, they'll be the person, you know, at that fruit punch bowl who says, you know, I don't really know anybody here. I don't really know how to start to meet some of these people. Could you introduce me to somebody? And that's how they handle the social networking, where they're awkward. They instead of just sitting back at the punch bowl, drowning their sorrows and feeling bad about themselves, they engage the person next to them and say, hey, you know what? I feel kind of awkward here. I don't know a lot of people. Could you introduce me? That's how high performers are handling these little situations in life. They're not the most confident person in the meeting who goes, I know everything here. They're the most confident going, you know what? I don't know this. Here's my question. What do you guys think? And that is how you lead confidently. You reveal that you don't know everything.
Rule number 8, be connected to your reasons.
Know your why is nice. Know your why and give yourself edge for it.
What do you mean?
Let me give you an example. 2 guys walking out on the track field. Who's going to win? Well, equal quality of experience, similar times, maybe they've raced before. The guy at the blocks who I'm going to bet on is the guy who came out and said, got to do this for my mom. They have a reason to perform at heightened levels. And they have connected to that over and over. Now, again, some of this, Brendan. But the finding, the research is they just do that more often than underperformers or even, you know, good performers.
Yeah.
They're more connected to their reasons why, and they're stirring it, man. It's like, and they do it from 2 angles. One angle is your like your internal standards. Like my values or my self-expectations say, I got to crush this because that's who I freaking am.
Yeah.
Like when you walk out, you're like, you're not going to, you know, screw around on when you're playing handball. You're like, this is who I'm Lewis. I'm an athlete.
Yeah.
I'm gonna kick some ass here.
Yeah.
It's that self expectation. Okay. Then though, they pair it with external obligation. Like my team needs me to do this. The deadline says this time. There's some kind of external, they don't call it pressure.
My family, something bigger than themselves.
Something
probably.
bigger than themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was another thing I was surprised by. They don't say, they rarely use the word pressure because they want it. Like people who use pressure, they don't want it. But high performers, I found they're connected. I'm doing this for a bigger cause, a bigger reason, a team. Or there's sometimes just like deadline. Like I'm an unbelievably high performing writer when there's a deadline.
Yeah, of course.
I'm
Yeah,
a
yeah.
weapon, right? Before that, I'm not always on my game.
Sure.
So, but if you have those reasons, so you got to have your internal reasons and your external reasons, and then your job is remind yourself of that more often.
Rule number 9, combine passion, growth, and contribution.
Passion plus growth plus contribution equals personal satisfaction.
Yeah. It's like those all coming together, a lot of people have never experienced. And it's hard for you and I to say that as personal development guys, but it's true. There's a lot of people who have never had those three completely line up, so they're not satisfied even with their job or their career or their life, because the passion isn't there. Even if the passion's there, they don't feel like they're growing. But everybody who I talk to, do you remember that first personal development book you read? Do you remember that first time you wrote tons of notes about what you wanted your life to be about? Do you remember that first time you watched a movie that inspired you to go change? There was fire there because that learning, it opened up your mind to a new level of existence for you. And as soon as you saw it, you were like, ooh, ambition hit your heart. And now if you can match it with contribution and you can see how that passion or that fire or that learning or that growth all aligns to some type of impact, now you're getting me fired up. Because now I can see the outcome of all the work. A lot of people don't do the work because they don't believe the outcome.
That's interesting.
If psychologists talk about the power of expectancy. When we talk about motivation, there's only two things that spark motivation. One is ambition, and that is I want more of, or I want a greater depth of, right? I want a greater depth of connection with my lady, that's ambition. Or I want a better meditative practice, that's ambition, right? I want to be better at my job, that's ambition. So it starts with ambition. But ambition, if it's not coupled with what they call expectancy in psychology, you're screwed. Expectancy says, I believe that I can figure that out. I believe that I can achieve that. I believe that that is possible for me. Because if we don't believe it's possible for me, you can show them all the results from 1,000 people, right? How many people say, I want to get in great shape? I'm gonna do ketosis. I'm doing the ketosis thing, man. And they hop on your Instagram and they see the cuts, they see the changes, they see the transformations, but they don't believe it's possible for them. So they don't try. Expectancy is their problem. You gotta bust through the beliefs to get them to understand that it is possible for them, not for other people, for them. And if you can open that gate for somebody, and often that's only achieved through learning, then you get somebody who starts really moving ahead forward. I mean, really moving ahead. Like the second they go, wait, that's possible for me, they'll try 50 stupid things, right? They'll try anything. But if they don't believe it's possible for them, they'll just quit.
And rule number 10, the last one before a very special bonus clip, is know that you are a badass.
If you're in this place where you really feel like you're struggling, but you're like, damn, I'm working so hard. I would say what she said to me, achievement is not the problem, alignment is. Once we got her aligned, her life came back. Literally, this person felt like their life was a waste, like they had spent 20 years doing something that wasn't the right thing. And there was a lot of guilt and shame and frustration there. But I'm like, you're a badass. But she didn't feel right because she wasn't in alignment. As soon as we got her in alignment, literally weeks, she changed. You would have thought she had, some renaissance of the mind, and it wasn't that many things. Just sometimes you're actually not off by 50 feet like you think you are. You're off by like 4 or 5 degrees. And if we can align your relationships, your career, and your health back into the right angle for you, you come back alive.
Now I've got a special bonus clip from Brendan on how to use the feelings that you have. But before that, it's time for the question of the day. I want to know, where do you need to go all in? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you're still here watching and you promise, you commit, let's go Believe Nation. We don't just watch videos here, we do something about it. If you're going to commit to taking action today, give me a hashtag Believe in the comments below. I want to celebrate you.
I need to do a good job here, and I'm motivated by that, not scared by that.
Yeah.
It's a perfect little connection. There's a whole chapter on it in the book. And what often happens for people is that emotional thing we were talking about earlier, like that Olympian, that emotion of anxiety is that's they're using that to raise their necessity to do better. They're like, I'm going to use this feeling I have and transform it to do better.
Yes.
Even though everyone else would identify that same emotion as I'm scared, they're going to say, this feeling is going to make me focus. This feeling that I want to have right now, I'm going to, put my A game on.
Yep.
And it's so cool because all the high performers I interviewed, over 300 literally verified high performers. We use objective measures, whether they're highest performing in their company or whether they fill out the high performance indicator. And we have this assessment now that can basically show you're probably a high performer if you score in these areas, in these 6 different habits. And interviewed over 300 of them, and every one of them at some point in the interview, and these are structured academic interviews, so they're way less fun than this. And so, sorry for everyone who I interviewed, but boy, it's just different. And what I found out was every one of them talked about that at some point. Taking what they were experiencing and transforming it into something that gave them performance edge. Whether it's an artist readying themselves to touch the canvas, like there's a thing that says, I want to be a great artist. I want to do a great job. And that self-talk is leveling up our necessity. Lots of people have amazing strengths, but they don't get off the couch because they don't feel it's necessary to win, necessary to succeed, necessary to serve. And high performers feel like it is necessary that I show up today, I do a good job, I help others. Sometimes some answer it in the spiritual realm. They say, I feel called to do this. I feel it is my mission. I feel God has given me these gifts and I don't want to waste that. And that for them is a very spiritual, emotional connection to it's necessary for me to kick some butt, do well, deliver. Other people, they really got to mentally get themselves in that. I'm a little in between. I have to say things to myself before I walk into a situation to make me better. Like, before I came through those doors, like you have a bathroom out there, and I went in the bathroom and I do a little self-talk to myself and I bounce in place and I take 10 deep breaths and I'm talking to myself so that I'm ready.
If you want 10 more awesome rules from Brendon Burchard, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
There is a moment in which you are serving people or you're trying to achieve your goal or your dream in which now it is not a preference, it's a must.